Hello, hello, hello. Can anyone check? Hello, hello. Can anyone hear me?
I agree, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you three for being here on time or at 7:30. I want to wait a couple minutes, so give me 3 minutes, just in case anyone else shows up. Hey, everyone. It's right about that time. So, for the sake of efficiency and practicality, I'm going to keep only one screen open at a time. I was doing a lot of swapping during our last review. And this review, I'd like to just have one screen open at a time. Okay. Uh, so today, what I'd like to cover with everybody that's here, thank you all for being here right now. I really think it's useful to, okay, sorry, I was looking at something else. I think it's useful to try to come together, even if it's on, once a week. There's some people that are going to watch this after the fact. There's some people that are here right now. We're all working on the same tasks. And one of those main tasks is creating a kind of virtual display of your work. GitHub, making your GitHub page, working with Atom, GitHub Desktop, and perhaps even Anti-Gravity. That's all part of the coursework here. So not only are you expected to use a combination of various software in generating images, 3D objects, videos, but you're also hosting that work on a platform that makes the work accessible to everyone in the class, outside of the class. It makes it accessible as part of, the internet. So, but anyways, last week, and I want to start with this. Last week, I asked everyone to submit their URL for their portfolio. Now, what that means is you have a GitHub page, you have either already something visible or you're just demonstrating that you were able to get it running and that you understood one of the key assignments here, which is developing a GitHub page. Okay. If we go over to modules, there were a couple of assignments that were due last Friday, and you're still able to submit or resubmit any assignment throughout the entire semester. You can resubmit it for credit. I want to see you get it right. That's more important to me than getting it in on time, but you have to get it in by the absolute final deadline, which is July 31st. So that's the absolute last day to do anything for this class. Okay. That's when your portfolio is due. All right. So this GitHub repository and page, okay, make a repository on GitHub, use Atom. Okay. Let me come over to GitHub. So this is my page for this class. This is going to be my repository. Okay. If I'm just on my page, I can come over here, go to repositories, right? And this is the one I'm working on for this class. And I have two files. Okay. Everyone in this class should have these two files. How do you generate them? Well, I'm popping Spotlight Search open, selecting Atom. Mine's is called Atom 2. I had two versions. It's just the default. Okay. I happen to be logged in to my repository on Atom. If I wasn't, okay, let's say I gotta come up here. Let's say I needed to open a project, and this has to do with the command line familiarization assignment. So let me come back here, sorry. With this assignment, what I was asking everyone was show me using a text-based application on your computer that's either terminal or command prompt, depending on whether you're on a Mac or PC, show me the path to your repository. Okay. That was a line of text. So if I pop open terminal, this window, right? I'm in that MacBook Pro. Where am I? I'm here. So these are my folders that are available to me. If I want to go over to documents, I notice that I have a GitHub And in there, I have multiple, right? So I can go over, and that would be the path. Okay. So I happen to know the shortcut PWD on terminal prints out that path. Okay. So it's under users, RBH, documents, GitHub, where to portfolio. Okay. Now that matters to us because if I had to find it here, my Finder application on Mac, I can go under GitHub. Sorry, I can go under documents and sorry, this is my personal computer, but I can look for GitHub here. There you go, GitHub. I can find where to, right? And now I can open it and there I'm now inside of my portfolio. Okay. So if that's not something that you think you can accomplish, try it if you haven't already to open your repository inside of Atom after it's been closed. The entire exercise of working in Terminal is so that you have a roadmap for accessing the folder file structure that's already been saved through your generating of a repository on GitHub Desktop. Okay, so I'll pop over to GitHub Desktop real quick. Let me bring this down. So now I'm on GitHub Desktop. Okay, this is GitHub Desktop for me. And I happen to be inside this portfolio. We're at the portfolio repository. Okay, if I go to File, New Repository, I can make a new repository. Okay, so if you're really having issues, you mess something up, you can delete it and start over. But now I'm inside of Huerta, and if I click open in Atom, it brings me to the same exact page where I can see my repository and I can see the subfolders. Okay, so last class, we made this index.html and style.css files. I did that by right-clicking new file, making that, right? So right-click new file, and then you type in index, and it has to be exactly these things for this to work. Okay, now before I go any further, I want to come back here, okay? Because one key thing that I mentioned last time, which is super difficult to understand unless you know the exact steps, is you have to adjust the permissions so that this page becomes something that's viewable by everyone in the world or anyone that has access to the link. You change the visibility to public. Mine's is already public. I don't need to make it private. Once I do that, I can come over to Pages. I'm inside my repository under Settings, go over to Pages, and if I deploy from a branch with my main branch being the one I'm deploying from, and I publish the site, it'll give me this link. And right now, the only thing that's on my page is that text. Why? Because if I go over to Atom, in my index file, which is what makes my page, this is the only text I have. Okay, so this is the only technically code, which is just text, plain text. Okay, so it isn't actually code in the language of the web page, okay, in this HTML format. So we'll look at how to address that right now. Now, just super quickly, if you haven't already played around with it, I highly recommend opening up anti-gravity and asking it some big picture questions. Okay, so here I've just opened up anti-gravity. Now, if you're still with me here on the Zoom chat, can I get a thumbs up that you can see the anti-gravity window? Thank you, Malachi. Thank you, Hama.
I see it.
Thank you, Hector. All right, so I'm just going to ask it big picture. not even super specific. How do I, or better yet, I know the question, what code should my index.html file have? Okay, this is me just making a very basic. Now, because I already gave it access to my system, oh, see, so I developed an application to detect AI images. Okay, I'm going to start a whole new conversation here. I am developing a GitHub page. What code should it have? That's super basic, super generic. I'm trying to put myself in the foot shoes of someone that knows nothing about it. Okay. What kind of question you asked? Yeah, exactly. So right now it's working. I asked it a question and it's working. It's giving me a plan. Now here's one of the main differences between Gemini, ChatGPT, a chatbot, and an AI agent. So it's making a plan, but it's asking me for permission to proceed with that plan. Okay, so it's going to build a premium portfolio website template, whatever. Okay, so I allow it to proceed. Now, some of the tasks that it needs to perform may need access to my storage on my system, a particular folder, the desktop, whatever. Okay, so it's making an index file and a style file, which should sound familiar because it's what we made on GitHub, right? Where is it? GitHub is here. If I come back here, if I go back to my code, I have these two files, right? The basic get attributes file, which you shouldn't do anything to. And then I have these two files that I generated. Okay, so I'm going to pop anti-gravity open, see what it's doing. All right, index, style, and it's even written a JavaScript file for me, which I haven't made, but it wants to add. Okay, now what I want you to really pay attention to is what it's asking me to do right now. Okay, so it's saying that it wants to make a directory. It wants to write a folder inside of my computer. Okay, that's not like what other AI that you've probably been exposed to does. Okay, this AI is actually doing things on my computer. So if I don't know what it's doing, then I shouldn't allow it to do it. Okay, that's a huge kind of principle to walk away from this with. This introductory class to digital media doesn't have any prerequisites because what I want you to do is explore concepts, explore different processes, all of them on the computer. Okay. They can have different types of outputs, which we're going to cover during the semester. But when it comes to the trajectory that digital media is going toward and the relationship to AI, it's just something that you need to confront. And so just be very conscious of that. Okay. If you're working with an AI agent, it now is standing by asking me, can it do this with my computer? And I'm going to say, allow this time. Submit. And now it's doing something else. Submit. Okay. So with Gemini, I think it's like Nano Banana, which is its local image editor. Okay. It's showing me what type of site it's going to make. and it's doing a software as service web app. Okay, it's going way too deep into this. Okay. So at a certain point, I might want to stop it and like redirect. But this is the most fundamental thing to get from this entire demonstration with anti-gravity. Okay, because I'm going to step away from this in just a second. And by step away, I mean like get out of anti-gravity. But I want you to notice what it did initially. Okay, the first three things that the AI agent generated were three different files: an index.html file, which is a very generic label for a file that allows you to make a web page. Okay, the HTML, the CSS cascading style sheet, that style.css file, that's what gives the flavor or the style to this web page. So the content and the form, you can think about it in those ways. Even though you could also write your CSS directly inside your HTML, best practice, keep it separate. And this JavaScript is for interactivity and motion, typically. Okay. So if we're coming down here, it's still kind of running, trying to do a bunch of stuff. I want to backtrack and just look at what it's already made. Okay. Now look at this. Look at all this code. That might be completely unnecessary for what I need. Okay. So if you aren't already familiar with Gemini, Google Gemini. What code should an HTML file have? Absolute skeleton level. This right here is what I will post in a discussion right now. I'm going to go to pages. So if you go currently to pages, and now this is for those of you that have not at all okay. I'm going to post this. Now, if you copy and paste that into your HTML file, so here it is, boom. And I save this, right? So I Command S, or I can go over here to File, Save, right? If I save that, look at where it's at now inside of GitHub Desktop, right? I can see it inside of my changes. So that skeleton information, okay? And it's listed under update. I'm just going to commit, push. Great. Now I have the skeleton code there. All right. And if I wanted to adjust the form, not the content, but the form, we could come back to Gemini and say, what code should my CSS file have for a page with white text entered white text and a off-white background? This is a very general question. Now, if you go into anti-gravity or even Gemini, you could ask it some like crazy questions. Okay, you could even just remake an entire page by copying and pasting an existing URL. If you really wanted to just completely remake someone else's work, you could do that. And that's the beauty of new media. So I'm going to bring this code I just copied that into Atom, bring it into style. Okay, so copy, paste, save. And I'm in Atom, GitHub desktop, commit, push. All right. Now that information is here, here, and here. Okay. What I want to see is what are the changes? So this is my URL. This is what everyone should be submitting in the module titled, or sorry, the discussion titled portfolio URL. Okay, so discussions, portfolio URL, reply and post the link to your portfolio. Okay, if I put that link up in my search bar, click enter, right? This is the text that I get, hello world. Okay, so for the purposes of this class, you don't need to understand necessarily what's going on inside the code. You just need to be able to make the code, see if it is functional, and then be able to check for errors when problems do arise. Okay, so the skeleton code or lines of text that you need for an HTML file have been shared with you on that page. And this style sheet, I'll see if it applies here in just a minute. I'll refresh this. It takes about 1 to 2 minutes real time for a change to be reflected. So if you push something from GitHub desktop over to the servers, the GitHub servers, it takes about a minute or so for it to actually happen. Now, I'm not seeing significant changes here, but this is, again, the most basic form of this. One more time. Okay, come on here. All right, but this is your first big effort. It's trying to publish this GitHub page and begin the process of developing it. Okay. So aside from adding the basic elements of the page, and you can use mine, you can also develop from that, do your own research, build your own body of code for your page. Okay. And I'll push you in a different direction next week. I'll try and give you some more examples of how to make something a bit more robust. Okay. And this CSS sheet was just super basic, and it's not much of a difference here, right? I could ask Gemini or even Anti-Gravity to give me some assistance here. Oh, I see. Okay. So this is just like a slightly higher level thing having to do with code here. how do I connect my CSS file with my HTML file? Okay. So form content. Inside of my HTML file, I need a line of code that references this file here. Okay, so they're in the same repository. This is the line of code I need. This is an example of what it would look like. So somewhere inside of my HTML file, I need to have this line of code that brings up this style sheet titled style.css. Okay, so if I enter, bring this roughly here. I'll copy it again. There we go. Now, if I save that and push it, GitHub desktop, okay, takes about a minute or so, but I should be able to see the change. Now, the reason this will work is because my style sheet, my CSS file, is here. Okay, it's exactly spelled the same way. It's right here. Okay. Let me see if I can bring this up again. So here, right? Go into my repositories, go into setting, go into pages. I'll find my URL. Oh, there it is. I now have a change, right? I have white text on this background. Okay, so now I really don't want you to get lost in the sauce on the code part because that's a class in and of itself, right? Like we could look at the background color code, we could look at the color of the code itself, right? We could say we could even just ask Gemini, what code would I use for black or even let's say red text? Now, this specifically in CSS would be the number that I'm thinking about. Okay, I could possibly change the specific color of it, but again, try to big picture talk to anti-gravity or Gemini when you're trying to problem solve here. Okay, so post that link inside of the discussion. That's high priority. If there's something else that I could really encourage you all to do here is share what you're doing with each other. Not only share your URL, but also share the actual code inside of your pages. All right. At the bare minimum, you should go to pages, grab this base code, drop it directly into your HTML file, and save, push, commit. If you wanted to continue to develop it, right, you could look inside of the code and say, okay, well, what is the title of my page? Right? It could be my name. It could be something in particular that I can use to identify where it's portfolio, right? That's the name of the page. So up here, that'll appear as the tab title. And on the page itself, right, if I'm just adding text, I could change that. Command save, GitHub desktop, commit, asking me for an update for a summary, push, and then eventually I'll see those changes. Because the CSS file is white, pure white text, right? I could say, if I'm not mistaken, this is hex code. So hex code for uh, black text. All right, try that. Or maybe even just standard dark gray. Try that too. Come over to Atom and change that code. That was the text brought in by the AI. I'm just changing it so that it reflects what's actually there. My changes that I saved on Atom, I bring them over to GitHub Desktop. When I save, then I commit and push. Typically, it requires you to have a summary if you actually want to have that there. Okay. Now, this is before I refreshed it, this is my page. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and refresh it. Now, look, that changed to where to portfolio. So when I made an adjustment on Atom on my index HTML file, right, one of the lines of code here was the title. Okay, you see the opening and the closing of that area? Those are called tags, right? So title, open bracket, close bracket, open bracket, then you see that slash, that's the ending of it. Okay, so this line of code here is the title for my browser that's up here. All right. And these other meta parts of the head, I wouldn't get too caught up on. Okay, but this is a very useful line of code here because it connects your HTML file inside of your file tree or your structure or your repository, however you want to consider it. It connects it to your CSS file. So if I refresh again, eventually, let me see if it comes up again. I either did this. No, I just keep going here because I haven't saved my file or memorized it anywhere. So pages. Hasn't done that. Oh, it did change it there. So it made the text white. And I was waiting for that change to gray. So eventually it'll change. It's taking a bit long here. Could be the wrong hex code. I see CSS hex code for gray. Try something like that, or even this. Maybe just a different. Okay, so eventually I'll see this change here. I'm hoping, just by making that minor change. All right, so in the meantime, before I end for today, okay, what I want to do is just quickly bring up an example here. Okay, so I'm gonna open up a separate window here. I need to be patient for just a second. I'm trying to see the change. My may even want to ask Gemini or Anti-Gravity to do a double check for bugs. I could do that too, right? Like, why is my code not changing? This might not be the right hex code, by the way. Standard gray, center background color. Okay. So I could ask for help here, but I won't get distracted. Okay. I want you guys to build your own page and really push yourselves to try and innovate with the agent, with whatever AI working with. Okay. Actually, hold on. Let me just bring this back. Submit. Okay, I'll allow it to do this and this. And okay, so I'm going to stop that new conversation. Okay, look at my GitHub page for it, portfolio and check for bugs. All right. It's looking for that repository. It located it. It's going to confirm it. Okay. It's on the internet, searching GitHub. I'm allowing it to read the page. Okay, it found the repository. It's looking at my index file and my style file. I'm allowing it to run some really kind of lower end commands here. These git commands. You would do this from a terminal or. Okay, so now it's reading that style file. Okay. So these are the suggestions that I'm getting. So it looked at my repository. It found my repository on the internet and locally, and it located my files. So it's giving me a suggestion. Okay. I can also ask it. Okay, now this is one key kind of big thing here. I can ask it to like take on the entire project and do the redesigning of the portfolio, which would do quite a bit. Okay. So if I just, and I could even say redesign portfolio to look like X, Y, or Z, right? It'll take that on. So it made a plan. It showed me the plan. I said, go ahead and run it. So that JavaScript, and it's now trying to generate a JavaScript file. It wants to rewrite my index file as well. It's doing everything in a sandbox, or what it calls a scratch pad. So before it implements those changes, it does it. And okay. doing some basic debugging right now on my HTML file. Okay. All right. So at this point, it generated a number of bits of content here. And now I'm asking it to locate the repository on my system and make those changes. Okay, so this is where things can get really serious depending on what the content on your computer is. All right, so notice something huge just happened here on the left-hand side. Yes, I am. So it just made a JavaScript file. It updated my index.html file, and my style.css file is also updated. I didn't do a single thing. Instead, I directed the agent not only to check my initial bit of code, my skeleton code for errors, right, which it did, and I can go all the way back up in order to look at it, okay? But I also asked it to take lead on the redesigning of the project. And I could have even guided how it took the lead. I could have said, oh, make it look like my favorite news website or whatever, okay? So right now, it's doing all the back end stuff. Preview, publish. Okay. So this is one roadblock that it got to, which is previewing and publishing the changes on GitHub Desktop. All of this stuff it's gone through. And it even recommended what I should change or what I should list as the description. I should, according to Anti-Gravity, describe it as redesign portfolio to modern dark theme. Okay. But I'm just going to write update because I'm a human and I can make that choice, that lazy choice. Okay. So commit, push. All right. Now, if everything I just said about making your site, working with the agent, allowing it to take on most of the workload was accurate, we should be able to refresh this page. Oh, that dark gray earlier, right? I told you guys I had changed it to gray. So when I was working on that skeleton bit of code, that all they had was hello world, which is what I posted here, right? So instead of hello world, I changed it to my name. And on the CSS sheet, I made it gray, right? I come back here, boom. Now I have all this, random design that this made for me, which is actually terrible. It has nothing going on here. This is like a really bad website. Okay. So I definitely would want to delete everything and start over. But what I really want you to pay attention to is I was able to start in Anti-Gravity, ask it to give me content, ask it to make adjustments, ask it to actually kind of push the project as far as it could go. And then I just committed the changes on GitHub desktop, right? Commit, push, all of those changes I could see in here. So if I wanted to even redesign the entire thing, whatever it's made, and again, like I'm not happy with this at all. This is terrible. I don't know why, maybe this works. And I guess it does to some extent. It's functional. Okay. It's a site, but it's nothing like what I would want. So I might, if personally, I would do a lot of changes to this. Okay, but it is a fully functional site. Okay, so it has a home, the about me, it just made up something about me, my projects, all of these you will eventually get to. Okay, when it comes to projects. Okay, now, as I mentioned last time, mm, let's see, portfolio examples. I put up a bunch of examples of work from the semester before, so you can see people and how they approach this, right? So now here's one huge thing that's a benefit from looking at other work. I could come into, so I'm on Chrome on a Mac, and if I come up to the top, I can look at view developer inspect elements, right? And if I inspect the elements of a page, then I can look at the code that generates that. Okay. So this is the one kind of huge key giveaway here, or what I want to provide you in this particular demo. This line of code. So how did I find it? I went to an existing page and I hovered over that element. Okay, so I'm looking at this image. I hovered over it. Okay, when I hover over it, I can see it on the right-hand side. Okay, so if I zoom out, I could see all these other things that I'm hovering over, but here I'm only hovering over this section. So that's why it's glowing blue there. Okay, so this image.source text right here. Okay, I could copy that and I could technically bring it into my HTML page, my HTML. And I'd want to think about location now that so much has gone on, right? In terms of anti-gravity making changes to my HTML, my CSS, developing an entire JavaScript thing, right? And which is uneventful and not very impressive, I'll be honest with you. If we go back to my page over here, like it didn't really do much as far as JavaScript is concerned. So I would really want to go back into it and like rework this entire thing. Okay, but this is my page now. So it's my responsibility to make those changes. But let's say I wanted to add an image underneath building the future with clean code. Okay, what I would need to do is I need to add the file to this repository. And the way I'm going to do that, which I'm going to kind of bring you over to right now. Give me 1 second, please be patient with me here. Okay. I'm joining from a separate computer. Give me 1 quick second here. Sorry about the delay. It's the quickest way for me to find it. Okay. 9977. All right. So I'm actually going to share my screen. All right. So can everyone confirm that you can see my screen? Or anyone confirm? Yes.
I see it.
Awesome. Okay,
Yep.
so I'm working in Procreate here. Okay, this is one of my drawings. I like to work inside of Procreate, and let me actually see if I can get rid of this. Sorry. Okay, so this base layer, that's the initial image, and I'm just working on top of it by matching colors and making these kind of figurative elements all over. So here I'm like really getting into the palette of the underlayer or the reference. And here you can see some simple things, but all together, right, on top of the image, that's the final product. Okay, I'll go back here and I'll show you maybe a more dramatic example. Here's this one. I think this one I might have drawn directly on it. This one's still loading. Drew directly on this one, so you can't really see the changes. But let's say I wanted this image on my website, okay? And I'll bring it into Photoshop right now, actually. But I just wanted to kind of show you some of the images. For example, this one's a fun one. And yes, you can see the bottom layer. So that's the bottom layer, right? And then with all the background elements and these foreground elements, it changes quite a bit. Okay, so I'm going to export this, and now let me actually share my screen again. Okay, so I'm back on my desktop. I need you to be patient with me for just a second here. Actually, I'll take this one. First one, the second one I showed you. Okay. So I just airdropped the photo with myself. It's right here on my desktop now, right? Okay. So please do not get lost on this part. Let me know if you have any questions. I have the image that I've generated. Okay. I can bring it into something like Photoshop, let's say, or InDesign. Okay. Do it just to kind of quickly make a point. And once I'm done making these edits, I will then want to save that file directly inside my repository. The easiest way of doing that is grabbing the file and dropping it inside. So it's asking me, do I want it? Yes, I want to bring that in. So I brought it underneath. It's not exactly what I wanted to do. I want to bring it inside of Portfolio. So I'm going to go ahead and drag it in there. Now, there we go. So now I have my folder inside of, I'm going to, hold on 1 second. Let me do that. So now I have this image inside of my repository. Okay, I might want to change the name, but I just wanted to quickly show you that process of bringing it in. Okay, so in Photoshop, Photoshop, okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up This is fine for me. Okay. Maybe 7 or actually wider. So key things here: width, height in inches, resolution, nothing lower than 200 to begin with. Okay, the RGB 8-bit for now, I'm not going to change it. This is the dimensions of the image so far. And I want to drag and drop, but I've already moved that file in here. Okay. So that file is now inside my repository. And if I wanted to locate it, I'd have to go inside my folder, inside my documents, inside of GitHub, inside of Where to Portfolio, and I now have that file again. If I wanted it on my desktop, I need to duplicate it and put it back on my desktop. Okay, so that's some key thing that you do need to kind of realize once you bring it inside your repository, which I've seen students have difficulty with. Okay, so I'm inside of Photoshop. Here's my image. I can go ahead and drop it in. Once I drop it in, it becomes a layer. Okay, so in Photoshop, there's a lot you can do here. Okay, there's plenty of tools. Initially, what I want to do is just kind of format this so that it's those dimensions, and I'm going to crop it right there. That's all I want here. Click enter. Wonderful. That's the image for now. I'm going to duplicate this layer. Once I do that, I can change the visibility of that first layer, and I'm going to make an adjustment. Let's start with hue. So I'm going to just change the hue here. Now I have this moment, maybe boost the saturation. Okay, we'll leave that for now. Adjustments, brightness, contrast, bring that up, contrast, higher contrast, maybe bring it down. Okay, we're going to duplicate that. Now that we've duplicated that, go ahead and remove the bottom layer. Here, perhaps I want to add a filter of some sort, right? Maybe a halftone filter. That's fine. Leave it at 8 radius. Okay. Now, we've done a bunch of stuff. Okay. We have that base image. We have that green image. This one I might change the hue as well just to come back here. I have to make sure I select this layer in order to make a change. Adjustments, hue, saturation. And I might even make this one black and white. So I can do that in a number of ways. I can hue, saturate, desaturate it, or just go to black and white and play around with the levels here. Okay, if I wanted to make it a bit brighter, I can go over to something like curves and start to play around, right, with the placement of the curve. Like that, actually. Okay, so bring this up, file, export, quick export as PNG, retitle it, page 1, just because, keep it on the desktop, that's fine. Show you a slightly different way to export it here. So change the visibility, file, export, export as, right? The first time I exported, I did quick export, export, notice that it gave me the dimensions. Here I'm going to put page 2 just because. Make sure that I'm not saving it in documents, but I'm saving it on my desktop. Okay, and now that I'm done with exporting those two here, I can come up to File and Export. Now notice it's giving me this crazy shortcut. So it's something like Option, Shift, Command, W. If I click Option, Shift, Command, and W, then I should be able to export as. And I'll call that page 3. Okay, now, key thing here. I'm bringing InDesign into this for the purposes of just talking about layout. When it comes to organizing your ideas, putting things together in a way that is cohesive or kind of demonstrative of like your approach to design or the design of your ideas, how you communicate your ideas. Okay, so I'm opening up InDesign pretty quickly here. Hopefully it didn't crash on me. Yeah, it's not responding. I'm going to force quit real quick. And I'll quit this. I can save it for now. Tennessee demo some, just because on my computer, I'll leave it on my desktop. That's a bad habit, but you should be storing all your files in the corresponding areas. Okay, so minimize this, minimize this, minimize this. Here's my desktop. Okay, very bleak. InDesign. I'm running the 22 version. That's probably why it crashed. I should update it. I can do that by opening up the cloud. Right. So if I go up here, I can see I should be able to see the cloud. I don't have the Creative Cloud application open. So InDesign is getting booted up. In this time, we're gonna wrap up here pretty soon. Okay, so new file. I can change that over to inches. Okay, I can determine the width and the height. So let's just do this horizontal orientation. Now we can determine the amount of pages, and that helps if you're like making a spread or a layout for multiple sheets, if you are going to print something, or if you just have multiple kind of slides that you're developing or a multiple document submission. Okay, so for now, we're just going to click 1. Right. So in InDesign, this is a really useful software program for developing layout when it comes to text and anything that is text heavy, or if you're thinking about laying out specifically like a book or a magazine, a newsletter. This is a really great program for doing that. Okay. Or any just still image that is like really predetermined. I'm going to drop these images in here. I selected them, right? I went into Finder, I selected all 3, and I just dropped them in, and I'm able to place them. Okay, if I just do this, notice what happens. I crop it, right? So I actually have to click inside of here. There we go. So you have to click the image, right, to change the size. And notice that it has a constraint box. Okay, so I can move that whole thing. I can also move the constraint, which can crop it. Okay. So it's not as streamlined as something like Photoshop when it comes to doing these really kind of quick operations. Right? If you want to resize an image, when it comes to laying it out inside of a magazine or inside of a book of some sort. Sometimes it does help to be a bit slower about this process, but line it up there. And I've changed it to roughly the same size. So you click that and it allows you to change the actual size of the image. Okay, there's one, and I'm resizing the constraint here. 2, 3, resizing that as well. Okay, so notice I'm doing a pretty rough job here at just layering these images, right? Literally one on top of the other. And there is some minor changes that you can do inside of InDesign. Like if I wanted to make a background, I could. But here I just made a black square. I want to send it to the back. And then add some white text. You don't have to follow this format exactly. I'm looking for one in particular, but I may not find it. At least not in time. Yeah, whatever. Okay. I'm just working with the text. Um, and now that I have everything laid out here, I can file, export, PDF. Let's call this download it into desktop, export. Okay. I promise I'm wrapping up soon here. On my desktop, should have a PDF. Okay, so that's the file I just generated. I exported it as a PDF. And there are some issues with that file. Hold on, maybe it didn't export properly. Yeah, it's just the images. I'd have to double check what's going on there with this particular image, but key takeaway is the laying out of the images, adding of the text, thinking about the layout overall. Okay, so now that this is exported, hold on. Oh, I see. I might, yeah. Huh. Um, that might have been, no, it's the same thing. I'd have to double check what's going on with this particular file. All right, so I'm in InDesign, I'm coming out. And the main image that I want to use is black and white image. So it's titled page pag3.png. So it's a PNG file. Okay. I want to come back into Atom. I want to delete this image. Okay, move to trash. Yes. Now, if I delete it from Atom, it's in my trash. Okay. So, for example, this image on the right-hand side, this page 3 image, I'm going to make a quick duplicate just to have it. And these could be 3 different drafts, right? I have a color one cropped, I have the green one, and then I have the black and white one. And there's nothing inside of the repository right now. Okay. But I said that I wanted to have the text, the image underneath that big block of text. Okay. So we're going to come back into Chrome really quickly. Come into this, pull this bit of code right here, copy this element, come over to Atom, look for that bit of code, which was, if I remember correctly, building the future with clean code. So I want the image under that. So I got to look for building the future with clean code. So inside that header, inside of that header, I want to post that image. And one thing I want you to notice is look at the structure of this tag here. So open image source from assets. We don't have an assets folder, but we could make one. So I'm going to make an assets folder. I'm going to save that page 3 image in there. So now it's inside the assets folder. Okay, and so inside the assets folder, it's going to call for page 3. We'll leave this for now. Okay, we'll leave this additional text for now. And we're going to save that. We're going to push after we describe the change. We're going to commit and push that. Okay, so generating the information, placing it in the proper location. Okay, remember, this window that we're looking at is a position on your computer. Okay, if we go terminal, just to really prove a point here. Okay, where am I? I'm currently inside of Where to Portfolio. Okay, so if I print that path, I'm inside of Documents, inside of GitHub, inside Where to Portfolio, and there's 4 files in there. If I change directory to Assets, I can see that that page 3 file that I just made in Photoshop, right? That I dropped inside of my repository, okay, that I've now in history I can see I now uploaded that image onto GitHub. So if I go over to GitHub, I think I might have lost track of GitHub there. So if I go over to GitHub and I go over to my repository, inside of assets, I have this image. Look at that. So now I have an image in there. Okay. So this was my code before. Whoa, this is my code after. Look at that. That image is way too big. That is the original size of the image. So I need to resize that image. How do I do that? I need to go inside of my code and change the dimensions for this in CSS. Okay, which I could do, but I'm not going to bore you with now. So one last thing before we end for today. I think I covered everything. I'll kind of wrap things up in just a moment here, but here. So initially, was it here? No, it was in anti-gravity. Initially, when anti-gravity was doing a lot of work for us, it even did a mock-up of the page and what suggestions it had. It did like a nano banana rendering of this. It's somewhere way up in the log. I'd have to really go back up there and find it. Yeah, I lost track of that part, but it had done a small render. I think it was here. Okay. But anyways, that is my page right now. So if you go over to my page, just copy and paste. So I'm going to paste this into the chat here for Zoom. So if you guys can, okay, chat, sorry. So if you guys want to open that up, you now have that as a reference for yourselves. Should say where to more.github.io/where to portfolio/. Right? You now should be able to open up that page. And if you open up that page, right? So on Safari, you actually have to take a couple steps in order to be able to do this, but you can go into View, Developer, Inspect Elements, right? Or View, Developer, View Source. And this is the source code for the page. So this is all of the code that makes, and you can do that with any page. Okay, like for example, I can go over to this other portfolio example that I had. And if you get on system settings, you go over to Safari, you make a quick adjustment. You're able to make your developer, I think it's under applications. I'd have to really walk you through that part. Oh no, sorry. It's under so if you're in Chrome, I think you go to settings inside of Chrome. You might already have access to it in Chrome. I think it's only in Safari where it's an issue, but you just go view developer, and these tools help you get further access or information from existing web pages. Okay, an hour and a half has gone by. I want to cut it here. Let me just go ahead and recap some stuff that we've gone over. Okay, so the clone stamp and brush tool in Photoshop, I'll probably change that because the clone stamp and brush tool we didn't use for this example. Okay, clone stamp brush tool, it's very simple to understand. Here I have this layer selected. I'm going to rasterize it so that I can make changes to it. Clone stamp tool is right here. So clone stamp, if I select an area, so here I'm increasing the brush size. And if I select this area with option, right, I can clone a portion of it. And now let's say I wanted to brush out a certain area, right? I can also take a portion of it, right? So here I'm sampling, I'm clicking option, and I have this eyedropper tool. You could see it over here. right? So I can take something here and with my brush tool, once I select a brush, I can select a soft round. That's my favorite to paint with. Right, I can start to add that as well. So I didn't really want to use that. I think something like the clone stamp tool is a good tool to kind of know how to use and play around with. Right here, I'm just kind of cloning certain parts of the same image over and over again. Okay. But experimentation is good. I might just adjust the actual name of the assignments so that it's more about playing around and less do exactly how I'm doing. Okay, but the layout assignment, this one definitely is good to go already. If you have any questions for any of this stuff, please let me know. I'm going to add another one to portfolio, and it's going to be um, the development of your HTML. Okay, so if you don't already have that. All right. Uh, Anybody got any questions? I know that this was like really, this could have been a lot for some of you. Um, but I do admire you guys for hanging in there.
I
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
question, like more generally. Um, if we have like questions, about like previous stuff or previous concepts, um, like could we set up like a private meeting with you, or like how could we get extra help with the coding? Because I don't know about other people in this class, but I'm like really new to coding, so all this stuff is like very foreign to me.
Thank you. That's a really good question. So I'm glad you asked this, and I'll post an announcement about this too. Also, this is something that one of your colleagues in this class just took advantage of today. So, Hector, I'm sorry, I hope you don't feel like I'm calling you out, but Hector had some questions, and we actually set up a time to talk before class today, which worked well for me. So, we were just talking. He shared his screen, I shared my screen. I was able to go through the assignments. And it was like a really productive meeting. I hope you felt that way, Hector. But I'm happy to set up a time to meet the day of class. If the day of class doesn't work before or after, send me an email saying, hey, I need your help, or hey, I'd like to go over the GitHub page with you, or whatever it is that you have questions about, like and send me your availability. So, what's your question? What would you like to work on? What could you need some feedback on? And then, hey, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, this time works for me. And then I'll let you know if that works for me, or we'll figure it out. But I'm more than happy to set up a time to work with you one on one. I actually, Malachi is another student. I met with him as well. Um, so and this is also something that goes for absolutely every student in this class. I hope those of you in here um, don't have any anxiety or don't feel too much pressure about turning stuff in on time. I want you to grasp these ideas. So if you don't get it in by the deadline, that's not the end of the world. I'm willing to accept the submission whenever it comes, as long as it's before July 31st, which is the end of the summer session. Okay, so like even if let's say you were struggling with a certain assignment, like command line familiarization or whatever, just being able to publish your URL, don't worry about that. I will get you up to speed, and I'll give you credit once you actually complete it and you understand like what I was asking for. So Hannah, I hope if you have a question, just reach out and we'll set up a time to talk. That works for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That like really puts me at ease.
Good. Yeah, don't worry about it. This is Summer session, it goes by quickly. It's a lot that comes at you at once, but just reach out sooner than later so that you're not stuck at the end trying to like get stuff in order to pass or do well or whatever your goals are. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so you have an assignment due, Uncanny Valley. Read the instructions, do your absolute best, look at the examples, don't stress out too much about it, experiment, play, do your own research, figure it out, and then come to me when you have made some progress. That's the best way that I can help you. You need to struggle with it first and then approach me with your attempts so that I can give you some feedback. Okay? I really want to like leave you with that so that you feel encouraged to try things out. I don't want to give you all the answers off the bat. I want you to make the effort and struggle and challenge yourself. But if no one else has any questions or comments, yeah, what's up?
Professor, thank you so much. Today
Thank
was
you,
great.
Hector.
Thank you.
Good. I'm happy you feel that way. Okay, everyone, I will post this once I end this meeting. Have a great night. Take care. I'll see you guys next week if you come.